I'm Karen Mathis, and this is Karen Sweezy, and welcome. So as you can see from the slide, we have quite a slate today, a number of speakers. So if you can hold all your questions till the end for the panel discussion, that would be really great. We're going to start off today with Diane Klotz. Dr. Klotz is the Director of the Office of Education, Training, and International Services here at Sanford, Burnham in San Diego. And she's going to talk to us about making your personality work for you. And most of you should have in your hands a personality profile that you can work on later after the symposium today. So, Dr. Klotz, you want to start us off?
Thank you, sure. All right, I think we're all set. So key, as Karen mentioned, is please, I know you're excited and want to look through your personality profile and everything like that, but wait to do it afterwards if you don't mind. And I don't actually have any handouts, and that's for a reason, because people tend to get so kind of excited about this, not about me, but about the material, that they start flipping through it. So that's why I don't have handouts. But I think you'll have access to all the slides, and then if you want information sooner, you can certainly email me at any time afterwards, and I'm happy to provide you with information. So I started out with negotiate, and hopefully all 7 or whatever speakers didn't do the same thing with their slide. But I wanted to make a point that we tend to think of negotiation as trying to get to an agreement or to agree on something, but really one of the key definitions of negotiating is to get over, through, or around something successfully. And I really like to think of it in that way because it's really true. We negotiate all day, every day, whether we realize it or not. I mean, from the moment you get out of bed, you're negotiating with yourself about things, which is probably sometimes some of our toughest negotiations. I'm going to try to help you out with that today. But if you really can start to think about it in that way, hopefully it becomes a little less stressful in realizing we're just trying to have a conversation here and come to an understanding on something. So goals for the first 30 minutes, what I'm trying to do here. We're going to spend a little bit of time considering how we each as individuals receive incoming information, what our goals emphasize about us, where we tend to focus our energies, how we prefer to communicate. And at the same time, I'm hoping you'll be able to think about this as in the context of others that you know. Maybe you have a situation that calls for negotiation coming up soon, whether it be a new job where you might not actually have any information about the person you're about to be negotiating with, or whether you've been in a position for a while and you're negotiating for a raise or a different situation or a summer intern or a different office space or a new computer, whatever that might be. So normally this, I like to do this in a 3-hour workshop, and we do a lot of interactive exercises, but we're just going to go through it. So if you can keep all of that in your mind as we go through it, that'll be great. And the bottom line for me is that really knowing yourself and understanding others is the key, at least in my experience, to getting the desired results you have. So why is this important? I have a couple of quotes up here, and I would love to attribute them to the person who said them, but I honestly can't remember. These are all from workshops and trainings that I've done over the years that I've written notes in my notes, and so they're key. But it's not what you say, but who you are that makes the difference in the discussion. I think we've all had the opportunity or had a bad interaction with somebody where we've given them the benefit of the doubt, and we do that. So the words that come out of your mouth sometimes aren't correct or not what you preferred. Sometimes you're nervous and you don't say exactly what you want to say, but who you are always comes through in the interaction, and that really ends up being key. You can't not communicate. So aside from your personality and the words that come out of your mouth, we communicate in very many other ways. Our facial expressions, our body language, the tone of our voice often is a way of communicating. So something to remember, no matter how hard you may try, you can't not communicate. We're always communicating. If something isn't working for you, change your approach. I don't play golf, but people tend to understand golf analogies. But so, it was explained to me, when you're swinging your golf club and hitting your ball, if it keeps hooking left every time you swing it, you don't keep swinging it in the same way, right? You change your technique. So that's the same with our interaction with individuals. How many of you in this room have had an interaction where you feel like you're banging your head against the wall day after day, week after week? Yeah, pretty much everybody, I think. But what I'm hoping today will give you some insight in how you might be able to change your approach, because I'll tell you one thing I've learned is we cannot change other people. We can try, doesn't work. This is actually about the point where I usually tell a story of when I was a postdoc, almost coming to physical blows with another postdoc over an Excel spreadsheet, which sounds funny, but I think as I go through this, some of you will understand. So I'm happy to share it afterwards with anybody. So what I've found is the most successful negotiations, communication and conversation really, but the most successful negotiations are when your approach includes an understanding of not just yourself, but the other person. It's about two-way communication. So I'm kind of on a mission to change the golden rule, because we're the whole do unto others, and we're taught treat others the way you want to be treated. But really, treat others the way they want to be treated. If I'm having a rough day at work, or I come out of a meeting that was just, in my estimation, awful, I want to sit in my office and not be bothered. I don't want anybody to come talk to me. I don't want anybody to ask me questions about it or try to get me to talk about it. But I have a coworker who, if she had the same experience, all she would want to do is talk about it. And if I don't go into her office and try to draw her out about it, she thinks I don't care. So if I treated her the way I wanted to be treated, I would not be one of her favorite coworkers. She tells me I am anyway, but we'll see. But so really think about it more as understanding how others want to be treated, even if I say understand, but sometimes we can't understand. Back to that whole spreadsheet analogy, I still don't understand what was going on with her about that spreadsheet. But what I can accept is she wanted to talk about it in a different way than I did. This is one of my favorite quotes. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. We always tell people, put yourself in that person's shoes or put yourself in my shoes, and really we can't. There's absolutely no way we can. We can try to understand where the other person's coming from, but even if we were to put ourselves in that situation, we're still thinking about it through our own lens and our own perceptions. So really just understanding, like I said about that spreadsheet, I saw it as I was, and what I had to do is accept that she didn't, even though I still to this day think she's wrong. Let it go. Exactly. So, okay, back to the first 30 minutes. We're going to get right into the whole knowing yourself and understanding others. So I'm going to focus on the DISC assessment, the DISC model, which is the assessment you have. It's a little bit different than Myers-Briggs. Has anybody taken Myers-Briggs before? Has anybody done the DISC before? So just a few. So it's a little bit different. The theory around which DISC is designed was developed by William Moulton Marston, and he identified 4 primary emotions and associated behaviors, and his publication was called Emotions of Normal People. And as an aside, he also developed the polygraph test and the original, under a different Marston name, the original Wonder Woman comic. So I don't know what that has to do with anything, but it's pretty cool. And it's based on the concept that behavior is an expression of your personality, but this is not measuring personality. He felt that personality was too intricate, too detailed, too difficult to put people in sort of categories of understanding, but he did notice that people tended to behave in similar ways. So it measures one's tendencies and priorities, so what your preferences are, what your priorities are, how you tend to react. What this isn't, again, as I mentioned, it doesn't measure or assess your personality. It also isn't meant to assess your skill. So we all have things that are easier for us than others, but it doesn't mean you can't be good at them, or it doesn't mean you will be good at them. And it doesn't indicate in any way your potential of success. So you'll find yourself identifying most with one of 4 categories, but that doesn't mean you can't fill a role or take a career path that maybe seems more characteristic of another. All right, when we talk about strengths and limitations with the DISC model, Strengths, what we do well, what comes naturally. These are the things that others admire about us the most, but one key thing to remember is we can overuse those things, and then they also become the things that frustrate others about us the most and annoy others the most. Excuse me. Limitations, we'll mention limitation. These are the things which cause us the greatest energy expense. So it's really a challenge for us to do these. It's what we have to work harder to do, and it's also how we can unintentionally appear to others. So I think that'll get a little clearer as we go through. I just wanted to get through some definition type items. So when we get to the disc styles, we're all a combination of 4 styles. So we express the 4 styles to varying degrees. Most of us have a primary style, which is who we are most of the time, or what's happening in our mind most of the time. Many of us also have a secondary style. And key to this, again, is understanding that your preferred style only works well if the other party is receptive. So again, my preferred style after a difficult meeting would be to just let people be on their own. But my coworkers are only receptive to that style of mine if they're of the same mindset, right? So if they like something else, that doesn't go over very well with them. All right, so normally we would get up, and we're not going to do that, and move around the room, but I just want you to imagine that the room is a sphere, and it's divided into the north and the south. So just in your mind, or you can draw it on a piece of paper if you have it, put yourself in a category. If you feel you tend to be a more fast-paced and outspoken person or a cautious and reflective person. And a good example of that is, any of us who are in the sciences in any way are taught to be cautious and reflective through pretty much everything we do. But not all of us are that way naturally. So for example, say you're in a meeting and people are throwing ideas around about a new project or a new idea or something. Do you tend to go back to your office or your lab and immediately start setting up, get moving forward, start pulling things together, start coming up with a plan? Or do you tend to go back to your lab or back to your office, do some internet research, start planning something out, think about the people you're going to talk to first, that kind of thing? And none of this is good or bad. So one of the things about this, which I wanted to mention in the beginning, is that it's all good. Everything's positive. So kind of see where you are. You might fall more towards the middle of one of the hemispheres. It's very, very rare to be right in the middle where 50% I'm this, 50% I'm that. I also get a question a lot of times, well, this could be different at home or work. Not really, because sometimes you're forced to act in a certain way or behave in a certain way, but that's not really what's going on in your mind. I'm in meetings and I've been told I'm so patient and people are so grateful for my patience. I'm not patient. I'm seriously not patient. In my mind, no. So that's where you have to be honest with yourself to get the most out of all of this. Okay, so kind of think about yourself, whether you're fast-paced and spoken or cautious and reflective. And then we're going to split the circle down the middle. Do you tend to be more questioning and skeptical or accepting and warm? And an example of this is someone you haven't seen in weeks or maybe months stops by your office or your lab. Is your first thought, oh wow, how nice to see this person. I haven't seen them for a while. I've been thinking about them. Or is your first thought, this person hasn't stopped by in 3 weeks. I wonder what they want. They probably want something. They're going to ask me something. So again, sometimes as scientists, we're forced to be questioning and skeptical, but it's not just about the research you're doing or the work you're doing. It's about, who you are, how you tend to react and behave as a person. Oh, is it? I always talk loud, so I try to stay further away. Okay. So in the context of the disc, this then divides itself into 4 quadrants where you're 2 of what we just went through. Fast-paced and outspoken, questioning and skeptical. Over to the right, fast-paced and outspoken, but accepting and warm. So kind of in your mind, imagine where you would fall if you were a little black dot or a smiley face or something, where you would fall on there. One thing I would like you to notice, each quadrant is distinct and unique, but each quadrant also shares something with the quadrant next to it. So thinking about that. So the people in the green and the people in the red as we go through this couldn't be more different in many ways, but yet key is that they do share something in common. The green and the blue, completely opposite in this context, don't necessarily share anything in common, or the red and the yellow the same, but they're the ones that are really going to complement each other if everybody's willing to accept that. All right, so for DISC, this falls into D, I, S, and C. And for those of you who find yourself in the C group, the I is not a typo. It just indicates the fully copyrighted version of DISC. So when you go through certification and you can use the certified materials, we use a lowercase I, and there's an explanation behind why. That also comes with some words that describe key priorities for those individuals. And you'll see this again throughout the talk, so I'm not going to go through them right now. But again, focusing on what is unique to each quadrant, but also what each quadrant shares with the other quadrants. And there's what we have it. So hopefully you have in your mind where you fall. Okay. Why is this important? Why do I find this important? So again, what we bring to the negotiation is who we are. We're always with ourselves, and we can't get away from ourselves, so we're going with us. The more we are aware of who we are and what our triggers are, or what frustrates us, what annoys us, the more we can stay present in the moment, acknowledge why we're feeling frustrated or annoyed or sad or hurt or upset, and we can respond to the situation versus react, which is to tend to react, meaning if we're angry, we respond in an angry way. The more aware we are of who the other individual is and what triggers them or what frustrates them, the more likely we are to be able to facilitate a positive interaction, right? Because you're getting some of this knowledge here today, but they might not have it. So it may be up to you to really notice those things and be the one to facilitate the positive experience. So I always like to remind everybody to try to think of negotiation as a collaboration rather than a competition. Growing the pot for everybody gets to win. That's really ideal. So knowing yourself and knowing others, this is where you're going to kind of think about yourself, but think about others as well. So we're going to go through these 4 quadrants, and again, it's fine if you laugh when I talk about where you fit. I always do still. Crack myself up about it. But so let's start with the D. So upper left quadrant, D stands for dominance. Again, all of the words that are used in this context are meant to be positive. Nothing is meant to be negative. A lot of the words tend to be viewed as negative, and sometimes there's a male-female concern also, where sometimes the words can connote a negativity on one sex versus the other. So all meant to be positive. So people with the dominant style tend to be direct, very results-oriented, and they can come across as being strong-willed and forceful. So you tend to see a lot of self-confidence in these individuals, and maybe even risk-taking for those of you who are very cautious with your approach at work. Their priorities and their motivators. So I mentioned interests here. So when you go into negotiations, there's a discussion about whether something is a position or an interest. So for example, I might say in a negotiation with somebody about what time the group meets, I'm not meeting at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. That's my position. I'm not meeting at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. And if I keep just saying I'm not meeting at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays, people get really frustrated about that. But if I explain what my interest in the whole situation is that, I teach Pilates and I have a 7 a.m. private session that I teach. And it's really difficult for me to leave the Pilates studio at 8:15 and get to work by 9 and be fresh and engaged and ready to go into that meeting. So if there's any way we can push that to 9:30, that would be helpful to me, because teaching Pilates is something that I really enjoy, and that helps me be more engaged here at work. So that's my interest in the situation. It's really not about 9 a.m., because 9 a.m. on a Tuesday or a Thursday would be perfectly fine. So that's what I mean when I talk about interests, and really getting to an understanding of what's going on with the other person on their side of the negotiation. So for the Ds, getting immediate results, taking action, challenging themselves and others, very motivated by power and authority, competition and winning. Sometimes this competition and winning, it doesn't have to be with other people, it's often within themselves. And success, they like to see things succeed by their definition. So limitations, this is again how they can come across. They can come across with having a lack of concern for others. They can come across as being impatient. They probably are impatient. Just gave myself away. And they can come across as being insensitive. So this is something to think about. So how many of you think you're a D? How many of you know other Ds, other people who are Ds? Yeah, that's what always happens. We always, whatever it is that we're not, we always tend to think we're way more of that. So moving over into the Is, the influence. So people with the influence style tend to be very outgoing and enthusiastic, smile a lot, they're lively, they're engaging. What you notice with them is charm, enthusiasm, talkative, very sociable. Their priorities and interests, expressing enthusiasm, encouraging collaboration, and taking action. So again, Ds and Is can get very, very frustrated with each other. Ds are very focused on results, Is are very focused on people, and that can be a clash. But what they do have in common is taking action. So something to remember. That's the common ground. They're motivated by social recognition, doing things in group activities, especially if they get to organize them, and friendly relationships. So for a D, not necessary to like you to have a great working, successful project with you. Is, it's a lot more difficult for them if they don't like you as an individual, as a person. Not that they can't, but they really like to like their coworkers. Limitations for them, they can appear to be very impulsive, very disorganized, and a lot of times it comes across as they have a lack of follow-through. They're following through in their own mind. It's not that they're not following through, but if you didn't give them a deadline or tell them exactly what your expectation is, it may seem like they're not coming through on your expectations. So who's an I? Who knows an I? All right, so S, the steadiness. People with the steadiness style tend to be very even-tempered, very accommodating, patient, humble, tactful. They're very humble, they're very good listeners, and they're team players. So a lot different than the Is in that the S's tend to be way, I guess, more subdued and quiet than the Is, but again, collaboration and teamwork is big to both of them. Priorities and motivators, giving support, being able to support others, and maintaining a stable environment. Enjoying collaboration, cooperation, opportunities for them to help, and sincere appreciation. Is just really like it when you tell them how awesome they are. S's like it if they really think you mean it. So limitations, they can come across as being overly accommodating, tending to avoid change, and very indecisive or not wanting to make a decision. The thing about S's, though, is they really want to hear what everybody thinks before they make their decision because they think everybody's opinion is equally valuable. So just something to watch out for if you're an S. Explain where you're coming from, why you're not making a decision yet. Who's an S? I want to be an S so much, but... Who knows an S? There you go. All right, C, conscientiousness. So people with the conscientiousness style, very analytical, reserved, precise, private, systematic. What you notice from them, they tend to be very skeptical, very reserved, quiet. A lot of precision and analysis goes into what they do. When you take your assessment, know that if you're in any form of scientific work, research, analysis, you may have the tendency to answer the questions like a C because, again, that's what we're taught to do. But you really have to go into your head and think, back to that spreadsheet thing. Was it really important to have everything perfect and all the columns the same size and all the rows the same size? And some of you are like, yeah, duh. Or were you only doing that because you really absolutely needed to do that and you would have just been happy to send it off because it was just a first draft anyway? So priorities and interests and motivators for the conscientiousness style. Really important to them that they can ensure accuracy, also like to maintain stability, and they will challenge assumptions, so analyzing everything. They're motivated by opportunities to use their experience and opportunities to gain more so they can be the expert in something else. High attention to quality. Where they can be limited in what others perceive of them or within themselves is they can tend to come across as being overly critical, really just trying to help out and exhaust all possibilities, but others can see that as just criticizing everything they do. They have a tendency to overanalyze. No analysis is enough. So really need to be encouraged to move on. And they can tend to isolate themselves. They'll just go to work and they could sit in their office all day. These are the people that might forget to eat lunch just because they're working. And it's fine if they don't talk to another person all day long. So investigating further. So this is something that you'll have when you see the slides, but I think most of you have the assessment. If you don't, this just gives you an idea. So I'm going to pass through this, and it's just an opportunity for you to assess where you fall on each scale. As I said, we're all parts of the same. So back to this as a reminder. So communicating effectively with the different types. So again, everything we've learned about the different types with those Ds. So when you think about what you learned about the Ds, action, drive, challenge, when you're communicating with them, use time wisely and get right to the point. Ds love bullet points. They love the bottom line first, and then they can ask more questions. They like the big picture, why is this important? Avoid sugarcoating and overanalysis. If any of these individuals can take it, the Ds can. They might be saying things about you in their head, but you're not going to hurt their feelings. You really aren't, unless it's something personal and it's a personal relationship. Consider communicating in writing. Never, ever, ever, if it's a difficult conversation or a communication about disappointment or disagreement with something, communicate in writing. But if you just have a quick question for them about something, or say leading up to your negotiation with your boss about a higher salary, you don't want to irritate them before you're going into that negotiation with them. So consider communicating in writing if it's just a quick question. These aren't the people who you just want to stop by their office and chat necessarily. Face issues quickly and directly, and you can expect candor from them. They'll be very direct. So I, the influence, communicating with the eyes. Listen, make that personal connection with them. Convey your enthusiasm for their ideas and optimism that things are going to work out. And give acknowledgement where acknowledgement is due. If they did something great, acknowledge that. Acknowledge their feelings and avoid personal attacks. So this is the group that least likes to hear, you did this or you said that. It's sort of like when we were talking the other day, this or that came up. Again, it's not being fake or anything like that. It's just really taking the approach that the other person's going to be receptive to. Expect spontaneity from them. They are the people who will stop by your office unannounced. Steadiness, communicating with the S, give a heads up when possible. So again, these individuals like to be supportive, they like collaboration, reliability, they like stability. So if you need to have a conversation with them about something, even if it's nothing that's threatening to them, give them a heads up and say, hey, can we meet next week about X, Y, and Z? They like to prepare, they like to have time to think about things. Ask for their input, be collaborative, ask them what they think. Respect their caution. Again, I mentioned they're going to ask everybody else's opinions. So really, when they speak up, it's well thought out. So respect that. Practice patience with them. Again, they like to think things through, so give them time to do that. And you can expect diplomacy from them. These are the people who, no matter what they say, it just comes out completely diplomatic and kind. And the conscientiousness style, when you're communicating with them, be precise and focus on the facts. This group does like details. Be less theoretical and more concrete. So less big picture and more down to exactly what the specifics of the conversation are. Show appreciation for their logic and allow them time to process. So again, let them think about it, let them come back to you maybe with their idea and not expect an answer right then. Avoid becoming emotional. So approaches such as, we worked so hard on this and we're so disappointed that you didn't like it, it's not going to work with them. To them, this is work, the project was this, it didn't turn out the way. It's awesome that you worked so hard, but it's still not good enough. And you can expect skepticism from them. So just a reminder, something to quickly look at when you're thinking about all of this. The Ds, what's important to them is getting it done. The Is want to get everybody together. The S's want everybody to get along while they're together. And the C's want it to be right. They want to get it right. So this is just a really quick way to be able to think about all of this. So what to remember from all of this? Again, we bring who we are to the negotiation or the conversation or the situation. So really important to go in there understanding who we are and remembering, okay, this is why this is annoying me, so let's move forward. Know yourself, what I just mentioned. Take time to respond versus just reacting. Consider the other person. That's going to help you facilitate a positive environment, and also focusing on the two-way communication. What is everybody else getting out of it? Think about what the other person wants out of the situation as well. Again, if you can think about collaboration versus competition, and possibly encourage and even use that in part of your negotiation, that this is your goal for everybody to win, for both sides to get what they want, or to improve, or to grow, versus just you. And focus on what you have in common, and view differences as something complementing each other versus antagonizing each other. Last thing, it really is about both parties winning. The most successful negotiations and the most successful negotiation techniques that I've learned about, growing the pie is actually one of the key terminologies I've learned, and it really means that, there's a whole pie, and maybe you get half and the other person gets half, but you can actually make a bigger pie. So think about it in that way versus you're taking half and you're losing half. It's really about growing that whole pie for everybody. And I still have yellow, so I don't know any jokes. Sorry. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Diane.